Not with the interest of making a film about it. I was just interested as a citizen, because at that time,
Imagine you're standing on the set of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969. The blazing Utah desert sun beats down, cameras are ready to roll, and two men, Robert Redford and Paul Newman, are preparing to shoot an iconic scene. Laughter echoes, scripts are passed back and forth, but behind those smiles lies a secret no one could have suspected, a quiet tension, an unbridgeable divide. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that Hollywood has kept hidden for decades, a story that shakes the glamorous image we often see on the silver screen. I'm your storyteller, a lover of classic films, and today, we're diving into a secret about Robert Redford, the man hailed as the epitome of calm in the storm of Hollywood. At 88 years old, Redford has decided to share the truth, the deep-seated conflicts with 7 actors he couldn't stand. This isn't gossip or whispers on the sidelines. These are real names, confirmed by Redford himself. Some of these names will shock you, even make you see your favorite films in an entirely new light. This story isn't just about conflict or oversized egos. It's about the scars Hollywood leaves behind, the pressures lurking behind the spotlight, and a man who always maintained professionalism, even when his heart was heavy. So, dear audience, join me as we step into this world where glitz conceals the shadows of the backstage. First, let's talk about Robert Redford. For many of us who grew up with the Hollywood of the 60s and 70s, Redford isn't just an actor. He's an icon, with his golden hair, piercing eyes, and an almost unshakable calm demeanor. From The Sting to All the President's Men, from The Natural to Ordinary People, Redford didn't just act. He directed, produced, and told stories that touched the heart. What set him apart was his discipline. Redford believed in collaboration, in seeking truth in every frame. He disliked chaos, shunned drama, and always put art first. That's why, when he clashed with those whose work styles were his polar opposite, conflict was inevitable. Today, we'll go through each name on Redford's list, uncovering what happened and why these stories still intrigue us after all these years. Let's start with Gene Hackman. Do you remember Downhill Racer, the 1969 film about skiing, where Redford played an ambitious athlete? Hackman was in it too. And on screen, they created a gripping, tense story. But behind the cameras, things were far from smooth. Hackman was a brilliant actor, a man with explosive energy and the ability to turn every scene into an emotional battlefield. But on set, he was like a storm no one could control. Hackman often challenged the director, changed the script on the spot, and sometimes erupted during rehearsals. Redford, who always stayed calm and prepared meticulously, grew weary of this instability. There's a story that industry insiders still talk about, a moment that defined their relationship. During a crucial scene, Hackman got furious because the lighting didn't highlight him properly. He refused to leave his trailer, leaving the entire crew waiting for nearly an hour. Finally, Redford, his patience worn thin, walked to Hackman's trailer, opened the door, and said bluntly, "This isn't your movie alone, Gene. This is a team effort. Show up or step aside." Redford's voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to silence everyone. Hackman returned to work, but from that moment on, they never spoke outside of professional matters. Redford once called Hackman a sledgehammer in a violin shop, an undeniable talent, but with a work style that shattered all finesse. In the years that followed, though both became icons of the new Hollywood, they never worked together again. Redford, who began producing and directing, even wrote in casting notes, "Hackman, not worth it." Not because of a lack of talent, but because of a fundamental lack of respect. Can you imagine it? Two men so talented, yet unable to find common ground. Next, we have James Woods. This is a different story, and perhaps one of the most controversial. Redford and Woods never starred in a film together, but Woods auditioned for several of Redford's projects and was rejected outright. Redford found Woods too confrontational, too chaotic, and carrying an energy he couldn't tolerate. Picture an audition in the late 80s. When Woods walked into a room to try out for a legal drama Redford was developing, Woods began acting, and at first, it was impressive, sharp, intense, full of energy. But then, mid-scene, he suddenly stopped to argue about the political meaning of a line. The audition quickly turned into a lecture on Cold War foreign policy. Redford, who always focused on the art, sat there, quietly closed the script, and left the room. Later, he told his team, "If I wanted a debate, I'd have gone back to college." Woods, with his sharp wit and desire to dominate every space, was something Redford couldn't accept. Redford once wrote in casting notes, "James Woods, never, ever." Part of this tension stemmed from their differing political views. Woods leaned conservative, while Redford leaned liberal. But Redford insisted the issue wasn't just politics. To him, Woods brought chaos to places that needed calm. This story became an industry anecdote. Many in the casting world recall that Redford didn't just reject Woods, he ensured Woods' name never appeared in his projects. Woods, for his part, occasionally took veiled jabs at Redford in interviews, calling people like Redford Hollywood's hypocrites. But Redford didn't respond. He stayed silent, as he always did. Now, let's move to Dustin Hoffman. Dear audience, if you've seen All the President's Men, you can't forget the duo of Redford and Hoffman as the journalists investigating Watergate. On screen, they were a perfect pair, complementing each other naturally. But behind the scenes, things were far from easy. Hoffman was an actor who loved improvisation. He often changed his approach mid-scene, added unscripted lines, and sometimes disrupted the rhythm Redford had carefully prepared. Redford, who arrived on set with meticulous preparation, felt like he was chasing Hoffman instead of collaborating. There was a scene in the newsroom where Hoffman did 7 takes with 7 different tones, from serious to sarcastic, forcing Redford to constantly adjust his reactions. By the 7th take, Redford was reportedly close to losing his patience. He turned to director Alan J. Pakula and said, "We're telling a story, not chasing 1,000 little moments." Pakula, a talented director, tried to keep the peace between the two stars, but everyone could feel the tension. It wasn't overt hostility, but a quiet discord, a lack of harmony. After the film, Redford and Hoffman never worked together again. When asked why, Redford simply said, "Once was enough." What's remarkable, though, is that despite these tensions, All the President's Men remains a masterpiece. It reminds us that sometimes conflicts behind the scenes don't dim the magic on screen. But for Redford, the experience left a lesson: collaboration is key. And he didn't want to repeat such a challenging process. Next, we have Tom Cruise. And this is a story from later in Redford's career. In Lions for Lambs in 2007, Redford not only starred but also directed. He wanted the film to be a profound statement about systemic failures, a warning about politics and war. But working with Cruise, who is both an actor and a producer, Redford realized they had entirely different visions. Cruise, at the time, was a global superstar, known for action films like Top Gun and Mission Impossible. In Lions for Lambs, he wanted to show a more serious side, but his approach disappointed Redford. Cruise focused on image, lighting, camera angles, and how the audience would perceive the film. Redford called it corporate thinking, Not emotion, not truth, but branding. There was a moment on set when Cruise paused mid-scene to request lighting adjustments. He wanted to look more disciplined, with perfect lines. Redford, who once spent 3 days rehearsing a silent scene for ordinary people, shook his head and said, "Are we acting or shooting a political ad?" The comment, though soft, silenced the entire crew. The tension didn't stop there. As a producer, Cruise wanted control over everything from poster design to editing. Redford, who believed in the director's vision, felt like he was being micromanaged. The film ultimately flopped at the box office, and Redford called it one of the most disappointing projects of his career. Afterward, he never spoke to Cruise again. Faye Dunaway is the next name, and this is a story full of drama. In 3 Days of the Condor in 1975, Redford and Dunaway played a couple caught in a spy conspiracy. On screen, they had tense and romantic moments, but off-screen, they could barely stand each other. Dunaway was a perfectionist, famous for her role in Chinatown, but on set, she was like a tempest. She demanded to review takes, changed the script at the last minute, and even controlled lighting down to the smallest detail. Redford, who believed in trusting the team and keeping momentum, felt like every day was a negotiation. Once, Dunaway insisted on reshooting a minor scene for the 4th time just to tweak a slight vocal inflection. Redford, who trusted his instincts, snapped, "We're not building a clock. Faye." In a heated meeting with director Sidney Pollack, Dunaway questioned the emotional logic of her character. Redford, after a long silence, finally replied, "This is a spy movie, Faye, not Chekhov." That remark silenced the room. Dunaway stormed out, and though she returned to work the next day, their relationship never recovered. Redford called her a hurricane in high heels, a talented woman, but unable to trust anyone, even her co-star. After the film, they never collaborated again, and Redford even requested a stand-in for some scenes after Dunaway left the set. Robert Duvall, in The Natural in 1984, is another surprise. This baseball classic stars Redford as Roy Hobbs, a driven player, and Duvall as Max Mercy, a scheming sports journalist. On screen, they created unforgettable moments. But behind the scenes, they were like oil and water. Redford approached the film like a symphony, with every detail meticulously prepared, from body language to breathing. Duvall, in contrast, thrived on emotional spontaneity, changing the script at the makeup chair and sometimes altering a scene's entire mood without warning. Redford initially admired Duvall's naturalness, but as filming dragged on, this unpredictability became a problem. In a key confrontation scene, Duvall kept adding sarcastic lines, disrupting the emotional tone Redford and director Barry Levinson had crafted. Finally, Redford stopped the cameras and said, "This isn't your movie, Robert." Duvall shot back, "It's nobody's until it's real." They argued for 15 minutes in front of the crew, the tension so thick that staff backed away. Levinson eventually stepped in, and the scene was completed, but Redford and Duvall's relationship was broken. After the film, Redford said, "Duvall wanted to play jazz. I wanted to play classical. The result wasn't music. It was noise." They never worked together again and didn't even appear together at promotional events. And finally, the name that shocks us all, Paul Newman. Dear audience, I know this is hard to believe. Redford and Newman were Hollywood's golden duo with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Sting. They were the epitome of on-screen friendship, with near-perfect chemistry. But Redford revealed that, despite their closeness on screen, Newman always kept a distance off-screen. In Butch Cassidy, their relationship was warm, filled with laughter and long days in the desert. But by The Sting, things had changed. Newman, as a producer, wielded more power. He attended executive meetings, gave input on the script, casting, and even camera angles. Redford, who focused on art over politics, felt sidelined. He once told a close friend, "Paul's no longer my co-star. He's my rival." There were no major conflicts or public arguments, just a slow erosion of trust. Redford also grew frustrated that the public and media often saw Newman as the heart of their duo, while he was merely a footnote. After The Sting, they never made another film together, despite numerous offers and scripts. When asked why, Redford only said the timing wasn't right. But those close to them knew the real issue was trust. They maintained mutual respect, but their friendship faded, little by little, over quiet miles. Dear audience, hearing these stories, I know many of us feel surprised, even disappointed. Hollywood, with all its glamour, is also full of scars. Big egos, clashing styles, and immense pressures created these conflicts. But what I admire about Redford is how he stayed silent for decades, only speaking out at 88. Some of you might wonder, was Redford the problem? Was he too disciplined, too rigid? Some social media comments have raised this question, and I understand why. Some argue Redford relied on his looks more than talent, or was too arrogant to work with those who didn't share his vision. But I believe Redford, with all his professionalism, simply wanted to tell authentic stories. He wasn't perfect, but he always put art first. This story reminds us that even legends are human. They have bad days, conflicts, and heartaches. But what matters is that they created films we still love today. The Sting, All the President's Men, The Natural. These works endure, despite the tensions behind them. Think about the films you loved as a kid. Did you ever think everything on set was perfect? I did too. But hearing these stories, I realize that true art is often born from struggle. Redford, Hackman, Hoffman, Newman, they overcame their differences to give us masterpieces. That makes me appreciate them even more. I also want to share a bit about audience reactions. When this story spread, many expressed their thoughts on social media. Some were shocked, especially about Newman, as they always thought the two were close friends. Others sided with Redford, saying people like Cruz or Woods brought too much drama. But some questioned, why did Redford wait until now to speak? Was he seeking attention, or simply sharing the truth? Whatever side you're on, I think what matters is that we're hearing a new perspective on Hollywood, one that's raw and unfiltered. Redford, at 88, has nothing left to lose. He doesn't need fame or validation. He just wants to tell his story, and I'm grateful for that. Dear audience, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of these revelations? Are you surprised about Newman? Or do you agree with Redford's refusal to work with Woods? Do you have any memories of Redford's films you'd like to share? Leave a comment below. And don't forget to share this video with friends who love classic films. And before I wrap up, I want to remind you of the power of stories. Hollywood isn't just about lights and red carpets. It's about people, with all their joy, pain, and complexity. Redford, Hackman, Newman, they're all legends, but they're also ordinary people, with good days and bad. And that's what makes their films so meaningful. Thank you for listening to today's story. I'm your storyteller, and I'll be back with more Hollywood secrets. Stay well, enjoy your favorite films, and I'll see you in the next video.